All right, welcome everyone. Today we're diving into a truly fascinating Katavishlation, a deep story analysis. We're going to unpack two incredibly atmospheric legends, and we're not just looking at the spooky stuff. We really want to uncover the profound psychology of folklore that's hiding just beneath the surface. In this explainer, we'll see how these traditional tales of the paranormal actually serve a much deeper communal purpose. So let's just jump right in and explore the chilling, yet honestly beautiful echoes of a forgotten Haveli and a mysterious dry well.
Picture this for a second. You're walking down a foggy mountain road. It's a dark night, heavy with rain. That's exactly where we find our first protagonist, Arav. He's just desperately seeking shelter in this abandoned, decaying Haveli. Now, switch gears. Imagine standing near the edge of an old, bone-dry well on a completely moonless Amavasya night. The air is literally dead still. This is the intensely isolated setting where we meet our second brave protagonist, a young guy named Neel. Right off the bat, both of these settings are textbook recipes for horror, right? They completely isolate our characters in the dark with the absolute unknown.
But inside that rainy Haveli, as Arav steps into a dusty room, he spots this bizarrely clean chair. Suddenly, a freezing cold wind blows the window wide open, and on that wind comes a whisper. जो सच जानता है, वही यहाँ से जा सकता है. He who knows the truth can leave. Now what's absolutely fascinating here is how that one single sentence flips the entire script. This chilling whisper shifts the narrative instantly. We are definitely not dealing with your standard haunted house story anymore. Boom! We're suddenly plunged into a deeply psychological quest for the truth. The spirit isn't threatening him, it's practically begging for understanding.
So, we've got two terrifying mysteries, and two very brave protagonists who actually choose to investigate instead of just running for the hills. To really grasp the brilliant mechanics behind these local legends, we're going to tackle this apne hisab se, completely in our own style. We are going to break down the anatomy of both of these ghost stories side by side, strictly using the evidence from the text. And as you'll see, by looking at them together apne hisab se, a singular, completely fascinating pattern emerges that tells us so much about how communities process their own history.
When we line these stories up side by side, the immediate parallels are just wild. Look at Arav's Haveli on the left. Foggy night, the clock strikes exactly midnight, and the supernatural manifests as the rhythmic, delicate sound of anklets, a payol. Now check out Neel's well on the right, Amavasya, a moonless night. The clock again strikes exactly midnight, and the paranormal shows up as the faint ringing of a submerged bell. Both guys are hit with highly specific auditory hallucinations at the exact same time. It's the classic witching hour, sure, but these aren't just random scary screams. They're distinct cultural markers of a very specific, forgotten time.
Let's actually trace RF's footsteps first. So he enters this closed Haveli just looking to get out of the rain, right? But then he finds a single lit lamp and that unnervingly clean chair in a room that's just caked in years of dust. The window blows open, and then he spots it, an old photograph of a smiling family. And standing right at the edge of that family is a young man who looks exactly like Arav. I mean, talk about a turning point. He suddenly remembers his grandfather's old tale about a lost older brother who vanished in this exact Haveli. In a split second, the paranormal smoothly morphs into a deeply personal, historical family mystery. He's not facing down some random demon. He's literally looking at his own bloodline.
Now, I want you to put yourselves in Neel's shoes for just a second. He's out there investigating rumors of footsteps. He walks up to the well and hears this faint bell ringing from deep inside the dry shaft. He leans over, peers into whatever tiny bit of water is left at the bottom, and instead of seeing the moon's reflection, he sees the reflection of a massive old door. I mean, no way, right? How terrifying is that? But the very next morning, he actually goes and talks to the village elders, and they drop this major historical context on him. Years ago, an ancient temple stood right there, and its bell was lost in a massive flood. So exactly like Arav, Neel's terrifying ghost story is instantly grounded in a tragic, forgotten reality. And looking at this timeline, it brilliantly illustrates Neel's proactive journey. On the first night, he faces the terror, hears the bell, sees the door. The very next morning, he goes straight to the elders for knowledge. Notice what he doesn't do here. He doesn't just run away and never look back. Fast forward to the second month's Amavasya night, he actually goes back. And he doesn't go back with, weapons or anything. He returns with the village priest to pray. He confronts the unknown with just immense respect. And fast forward to the present day, a monument is built and peace is completely restored to the whole village.
Which brings us to what is absolutely the core thesis of both of these folktales.
When Arav returns to the village the morning after his crazy encounter, he realizes he's actually still holding that old photograph. And written on the back of it, in these faint, faded letters, is this profound phrase, Yad rekne se dar samak hota hai. Remembering ends fear. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. It's not about banishing a ghost that ends the fear. It's not ignoring the spooky well that brings peace. It is the active, deliberate process of remembering.
Because honestly, the truth is that these forgotten histories weren't monsters at all. They were just lingering memories practically begging for acknowledgement. We see this so clearly in both texts. Right before Arav leaves the Haveli, that blurry figure sitting in the clean chair, it just simply bows its head to him, almost like it's saying a gentle, respectful goodbye. And for Neel, when the priest prays, these ancient inscriptions physically emerge on the well's walls, laying out the whole history of the temple's protectors. These spirits, these anomalies, they weren't out to get anybody. They just refused to be completely erased by time. They just wanted to be remembered. That's the whole shebang.
So, this leaves us with this incredibly fascinating three-step psychological progression. Step 1, the unknown creates fear. The dark, well, the abandoned Haveli, they're terrifying simply because they are unexplained, right? Step 2, investigation reveals history. Arav finds the photo, Neel talks to the elders, suddenly the supernatural gets replaced by real human tragedy. And finally, step 3, remembrance brings peace. This perfectly maps out how folklore acts as a tool. It helps communities process their own forgotten and honestly often traumatic histories. It's basically a coping mechanism brilliantly wrapped up in a ghost story.
Let's look at this comparison table, because in both legends, it was acts of communal respect that directly pacified these lingering phenomena. At the Haveli, the forgotten history was that lost older brother. The action? Arav went back with the elders, lit lamps in the courtyard, and prayed. And the result was incredibly physical. That heavy, oppressive air literally lifted, and for the first time in years, sunlight actually poured through those closed windows. Now over at the well, the history was the submerged temple. The action taken was the villagers building a small monument so that history wouldn't fade away again. The result, those terrifying footsteps completely stopped, and they were replaced by this calming, lingering scent of sandalwood. Action literally equals resolution.
The ultimate takeaway in both of these legends is that fear is entirely transformed into respect. Because the past was finally honored, the physical atmosphere of both these places completely shifted. The text tells us that the Haveli isn't this scary, forbidden place anymore. In fact, village kids now actively play in its garden. And the well, which used to be avoided by everyone, is now a celebrated local monument. The deepest mysteries, exactly as Arav realized, are born not from fear itself, but from incomplete memories. Once you complete the memory, the haunting just ends.
We've seen exactly how Arav and Neel face the absolute unknown, bringing peace to their communities by choosing to remember instead of just running away. But I want to end this explainer by turning this mystery directly back over to you guys, using this exact provocation from our source material. अगर आप नील की जगह होते तो क्या अमावस्या की रात उस कुएं के पास दोबारा जाते? क्यों या क्यों नहीं? If you were Neel and you had just seen a sunken door where the moon's reflection should be, would you honestly have the courage to go back to that well on a moonless night? Why or why not? I highly encourage you to confront your own fears on this one, and definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks so much for joining me for this analysis, and just remember, sometimes to dispel the darkness, all we really need to do is light a single lamp of remembrance.